Well, that was crazy. I want to welcome you. I was about to say we want to welcome you, and I may be live, I may not be live. Who knows? Um, but I want to welcome you to Let's Talk. My ride or die is not with me today. She's on her way back from Texas, and she went to see her dad. But today is her birthday, so I want to wish her a happy 35th birthday. 35. Um, and I want to encourage her to drive safely today. We are talking about being a peacemaker. If you get back on with us, thank you. I apologize for all the technical difficulties and glitches, but it appears I'm at least on one. I'm on New Song Community. Hey, Faith, how are you? Um, we're going to talk about what it means to be a peacemaker, and it's especially needed today. It's especially needed in our culture today. Um, with the tragic shooting in Nashville um, on Monday, it's crazy to me. All the various things that were said, all the ways that people are talking at one another, across one another. No one's listening. No one's paying attention to one another. Everyone's angry. All this venom, all this vitriol. Um, just really caustic, toxic. And so it's important for us, those who call themselves followers of Jesus, it's important for us to be peacemakers. In fact, Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers." Um, and so we're called to be peacemakers. He said, they will be the sons or the daughters or the children of God. And so that's who we are. We are adopted in the family of God. If you're a follower of Jesus, you're adopted in the family of God. And so you're called to be a peacemaker. And one of the things that we talked about on Sunday is we're not called to be peacekeepers, we're called to be peacemakers. And y'all, the reality in our culture is there's going to be conflict. Your family is not unique to anyone because your family has conflict, my family has conflict, all families have conflict. We have this sin nature in us that wants our way. We want what we think is right, and so we're going to fight for that. And so it creates conflict. And I've talked to multiple people over the last several days where they have conflict in their relationships and their working relationships and their marriages. And it's just reality. There's going to be conflict. But what do we do with that conflict? And who are we called to be as followers of Jesus in that conflict? And so I want you to type in real quickly, if you can, what is the most difficult thing to you in being a peacemaker? What's the most difficult thing for you in not keeping the peace, but making peace? And that's what we're going to talk about today. Um, as I stated, if you've been awake, you've heard about the shooting in Nashville, and we certainly need to be in prayer for those families who lost their children. I cannot imagine the pain that those families must be going through. I can't imagine the pain of what that church community is going through, and really the Nashville community. And then the caretakers and the custodian of the school. I think he was a dad of 8 children, so it's impacting his family. It's impacting the family of 2 women. It's tragic, and we need to be in prayer for them. And um, other people don't take you seriously. Charlotte, that's wow. Um, yeah, that's going to be a difficult one, and I hope we touch on that a little bit today. Um, I see you. You're such a peaceful person anyway. Um, I can imagine that you're a peacemaker by your presence. Um, they said people not accepting your apology and your sincerity. or not be able to give your thoughts because you're needing to calm the other down. Wow, that's an interesting one. I haven't thought of it. I haven't thought of that one. Um, well, we're gonna jump into this because I feel like, again, it's very pertinent, very timely. Uh, God, we live in a world where everyone is just at each other. Um, I'm looking at Lauren. I know in the schools, kids are kids, and kids are going to be at each other. But it's not just the kids, is it, Lauren? It's the adults, the adults in the room who are creating divisiveness and bitterness toward one another as well. It's a human issue, and so the need of being a peacemaker is that much more important. And so, what I want to do real quick is I want to talk about what peacemaking is not. Obviously, Marcy's not here, so I don't have a good joke. I'm not a good joke teller. If you got a good joke, you can throw it in the comments, and I'll let everybody know about it. What peacemaking is not. Peacemaking is not avoiding conflict. Peacemaking is not avoiding conflict. That doesn't create peace. That doesn't make peace. That's a denial of peace, and that is a running away from conflict. And so that's not what peacemaking is. And I've talked to people throughout the years, and that's how they feel like they establish peace, is they run away from the conflict. That's not being a peacemaker. Brooke says not feeling heard because you just want peace, therefore the situation happens again. And we talked about that sometimes we will strive for peace, we will try to make peace, and peace won't come because everyone doesn't necessarily want that peace. Another thing that peacemaking is not denying that the conflict exists. It's not hiding your head in the sand. It's not pretending that it's not there. I've talked to a multitude of people throughout my life and my ministry and asked them how they deal with conflict. And I've had several people say, I don't. I just kind of sweep it under the rug and hope it goes away or expect it to go away. And the one thing that we know is it doesn't go away. It just settles somewhere. It settles somewhere until a more appropriate time, until another time for it to rise up. And then it's potentially going to create even more issues because it wasn't dealt with. So what is peacemaking? Well, peace is a state of well-being, soundness, harmony, and that which is undivided. So that's what peace is. Harmony, state of well-being, that which is undivided. So a peacemaker is one who binds things back together that were once divided, restores that which is divided, one who seeks to end strife and establish harmony, particularly between oneself and one's neighbors. And so we're called to be the one who brings that which is divided back together. I want you to think about and consider where our world is right now, how divided our world is right now, and understand the calling that Jesus established for us to blessed are the peacemakers. It's a huge calling. It's calling us to a place where a lot of people don't like to step in, and we're going to discuss that because a lot of people, golly, I've talked to so many people. It's like, I don't like conflict. I don't like conflict. I don't like conflict. And so they just walk away from the conflict or pretend it's not there. And so I'm going to call us today, and we're going to walk through some principles of peacemaking, but I'm going to call us today into what God has called us to through the words of Jesus. And the first is this. In order for us to be a peacemaker, we have to be at peace with God. And the way we are at peace with God is to have a relationship with Jesus. So we have to be at peace with God, because what that does is that establishes, or should establish, a peace within us so that we can carry that peace elsewhere. We are called to accept Jesus, who is the Prince of Peace, to believe in Jesus, to trust Jesus. And then what happens after that is his Holy Spirit. Jesus tells us that I will send my Holy Spirit and he will be your comforter. And so his Holy Spirit comes and lives in us. And so we are now the bearers of peace, the very Prince of Peace, his spirit lives in us. And so we are the ones who are carrying the peace to the world. And what's concerning to me is that I'm not sure that the world experiences that through the church. Should be, but I'm not sure the world does. And yet we're the ones who are carrying the very presence of the Prince of Peace in us. And God is a God of peace. So the God that we love, the God that we follow, the God that we trust, and the one who saved us, delivered us, set us free, his spirit lives in us. And so if we're not making peace, if we're not being peacemakers, if we're not being those who are seeking reconciliation, then we're not living into who God's created us to be. And so we need to be the ones who are carrying the peace into the world. And the way that we do that is we are established in peace with God through Jesus. And what that brings about is the Spirit of God lives in us. And so Paul says that we have the fruit of the Spirit, which is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control. It's found in Galatians 5, I think, verse 22. And so these are things that are present in us through the power of his Holy Spirit. And whether or not you're operating and living into those, that's a different matter altogether, but they're given to you. And so all these things, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control, all those things are purposeful in being a peacemaker. And we look at the life of Jesus and we see all those character traits, all those parts of his nature present within him, and those are present within us. And so we have to understand that what we need is already in us. Now, it's not in us aside from Jesus, because then our selfishness and a multitude of other things that we want it our way, we want it a specific way, all those things rise up. And so that's gonna be a deterrent to peace. But the fruit of the Spirit does not divide. The fruit of the Spirit unites. The fruit of the Spirit brings together. And so those are the things that are already present in us. And then the second thing about what it takes to be a peacemaker is we have to desire peace. I encounter people that I think they enjoy conflict. I think they enjoy confrontation. I think it's something that they thrive on. I think they love the drama, and it's a very unhealthy aspect of someone. I'm sure you've met people who feel the same way, that you feel the same way about. They want and thrive. They seem to thrive on conflict. And so we have to desire peace. We have to want peace above anything else. Jesus says in Luke 10, 5-6, as soon as you enter a home, this is when he sent the disciples out. He says, as soon as you enter a home, say, God bless this home with peace. If the people living there are peace-loving, your prayer for peace will bless them. But if they're not peace-loving, your prayer will return to you. You carry peace into those homes. You. No, not me. Yes, you. If you are a follower of Jesus and have the Holy Spirit living in you, you are a bearer and a carrier of peace. So we have to desire peace. We have to want that. And so that's a pursuit that we should be going after. And so what are some steps of being a peacemaker? What are some steps that we need to put in place after we are at peace with God because of our relationship with Jesus? And because of that, we have the Holy Spirit living in us and the fruit of the Spirit living in us, and we desire that peace. So what are steps? And the first one, and again, we're going to read through these, and these are going to be, they're not going to be aha moments. They're going to be, oh yeah, I need to do that. But the first one is listen. Listen. Listen to the other person. If we're going to be peacemakers, then we have to be willing and able to listen. Listen to their perspective. Listen to how they get and arrive at the position that they stand in. But we need to listen to them. And we don't need just to hear them. A lot of times people hear in order to respond, but that's not listening. We need to listen. We need to care about the other person. We need to care about their position. And it doesn't mean you have to agree with it. It doesn't mean you're going to agree with it. It just means that you're willing to listen. And I've sat with people, and I know you have as well. I mean, even in their marriages, their spouse doesn't listen to them. You may be in a marriage where your spouse doesn't listen to you. That you're speaking and they're not validating what you're saying. They're not acknowledging that anything has come out of your mouth. And so you're pretty certain they're not listening to you. But to be a peacemaker, we have to listen to other people. And that's hard sometimes because you want to make your point and you want to state your opinion and you want to correct and you want to clarify, and we can't do that. We have to listen to all sides. Again, not for the purposes of agreement, but we have to listen to the other person. And then an aspect of that I think is really important is we have to genuinely be interested in the other person. We got to understand that this is not about the conflict. It's not about the confrontation. It's about the person or the persons sitting across from us. It's about really being interested in them, being curious about them, asking them questions, not questions to make your point, not questions that are really statements, but questions to be curious about them, to wonder why and how they arrived at that point. And I see people talking across one another because they're not curious at all in the other person. They don't even care about the other person. They want to be right. And we're not going to be peacemakers if we don't listen and if we're not really interested and curious in the other person. What I know to be true is none of us fully and completely have a corner on the market on truth. None of us. Now, the one certainty of truth is Jesus. That's a given. But there are some variables involved with what people think and what people believe. And it doesn't mean all of them are true, but there's certainly a multitude of interpretations about a variety of things. And so be curious about why people stand in the place that they stand. And as I'm saying this, my first inclination, and this may just be my bias, but my first inclination is in marriage. And how many marriages you're no longer curious about the other. You're no longer really interested in the other to where you want to listen to them. And it may be something where you're harboring resentment and you're keeping something against them. And so you don't want to hear anything that's coming out of their mouth. I think somebody said that. Be interested in them. The next point is validate the feelings. Validate what's coming out of their mouth. Acknowledge that something has come out of their mouth. Give them verbal responses. Give them nonverbal responses. Let them know that you're actually listening. Let them know that you're paying attention, and let them know that it matters that something is coming out of their mouth. Y'all, the one thing that I realize, and the one thing that we have to acknowledge, is every person that we encounter, whether how much we agree with them or whether we feel like they're toxic, everyone is created in the image of God. Every human being is created in the image of God. Now, all of us are not always operating in that image, but we're all created in his image. And so are you willing to validate? Are you willing to just acknowledge that something is coming out of their mouth? Not that you agree with it, but that you're hearing them and you're listening to them and you're paying attention. I know one thing, that if people don't feel like they're being heard, if they don't feel like that they're being validated in some way, again, whether through nonverbal or verbal responses, they're going to shut off or they're going to go on the attack. And so acknowledge what the other person says. Ask questions about what the other person says. If you need clarification, ask for understanding of what the other person says. Because the whole purpose of this is to make peace. The whole purpose is not to win your argument, but to make peace. I tell people in premarital counseling all the time, if you're in a conflict with your spouse, and if you're arguing, if one of you wins, both of you lose. If one of you walks away from that situation feeling like you won, your marriage has lost. And I've had people that disagree with me on that and debated me on that. Whatever. I lived early on in my marriage trying to win discussions, trying to win arguments. And I realized, probably not early enough, but I realized fairly early that if I felt like I won, I lost because I created damage. I wasn't a peacemaker. I was creating division. The next point is this: don't avoid conflict. As we said earlier, that's not what peacemaking is. Don't avoid conflict. Conflict in and of itself is not bad. Conflict will happen. A feeling of division will happen. I mean, think about it. Think about the teachings of Jesus created division. So conflict, difference of opinion, lack of peace, it's going to happen. So we don't need to be afraid of it, and we don't need to deny it, and we don't need to run away from it. But here's the point. Conflict is not necessarily bad. Bad sorts of conflict or bad conflict are bad. And what I mean by that is the conflict that leads to aggressive confrontation. And that's what we're seeing in our world right now. We're seeing a lot of aggressive confrontation. We're seeing people not listen to one another. They really don't care what the other person says. They just want to prove their point. I saw responses to the shooting in Nashville. Many in defense of the transgender community. And I saw responses that in no way were listening to the other side. They were just proving their point. And they were establishing their point. They were planting a flag, and they said, this is where I stand and I will not be moved. And if both groups are standing on opposing sides, planting their flag saying, I will not be moved, nothing's going to happen. There's not going to be peace. There's going to be not conflict. There's going to be war. And that's kind of where we are right now. But I not only see it in this situation with the Nashville shooting, I see it in marriages. I see it in families. I see it in friendships. I see it in relationships. So we can't be afraid of conflict, and we can't avoid conflict, but we have to understand that there is proper conflict and there is bad conflict, which leads to aggressive confrontation. And that's not what we need to do, but we don't need to walk away or run away from conflict either. The next point is this: respond rather than react. Now, the difference is this. A response is someone says something, someone makes a statement, someone establishes their position, and so you stop and you mull it over a little bit and you spend some time actually thinking about what they said. And if you possibly don't understand, then you ask clarifying questions. And then you let it resonate in you for a period of time. And I'm not talking about minutes or hours. I'm talking about for moments. And then you respond. But your response is to what they said. Your response is not what your response that you've created in your head that has nothing to do with what they said. Your response is responding to what they said. What I see in a lot of conflicts and a lot of disagreements and a lot of divisiveness is I see a lot of people saying things that in no way speak to or address what the other person is saying or has said. And so we need to respond instead of react. It needs to be responsive to what is said, acknowledging that they said it, and responding specifically to that. And then if you have a point that you want to make, then make your point. But don't make your point disregarding what they said, because then you're not responding, you're reacting. And those are two significantly different things. The next point is this: don't demonize the other. Don't demonize them. Don't make them the evil one. Don't make them a horrible person. And they may be doing evil things. You may be doing evil things. Some of the things that we do are really evil, but we justify them because we're the ones who are doing them. But we can't demonize the other. Again, you and I have to recognize that every person that we're encountering is created in the image of God. We may not agree with them. There may be some anger. There may be some hatred. But we can't demonize them. That's going to completely skew how we perceive them when we are trying to, remember, make peace. We are called to be peacemakers. So when you find yourself demonizing someone, when you find yourself building someone up into something far worse than who they really are and what they really are, you're demonizing them. And you're making them far more the other than someone who we could potentially move into making peace with. So that leads to the next one, which is we need to cultivate a gentle spirit. Now remember, this was part of the fruit of the Spirit that Paul talks about: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness. So we're called to be gentle. Now, gentle does not necessarily mean nice, because there are times that we may need to say something that's very direct, something that may not be received well, something that the other person may not want to hear. So it may not appear nice to the other, but we need to do it with gentleness. And I've heard this recently. I've heard several people say, no, we can't be gentle anymore. We got to fight fire with fire. You fight fire with fire, everything gets burned up. Everything. We are called to operate in the fruit of the Spirit, regardless how we feel about it, regardless of what we think is proper, regardless of what we think is appropriate. You see, Jesus was gentle, but he was direct. Jesus was forthright, but he reflected every part of the fruit of the Spirit. And we are called to do the same thing. So establish a gentleness within you. Ephesians 4:2-6 says this: always be humble and gentle. Be patient with each other, making allowance for each other's faults because of your love. Make every effort to keep yourselves united in spirit, binding yourselves together with peace. So always be humble and gentle. Always. Always. Not sometimes, not when you feel like it, not when you want to. Always be humble and gentle. If we are called to be peacemakers, that's got to be a part of it. We have a responsibility for that. So have a spirit of gentleness. The next one is very much like the same. The one above, be patient with other people and yourself. Peacemaking does not happen overnight. Peacemaking does not happen instantaneously. Even when we enter into a relationship with Jesus, our being reconciled to God is instantaneous. But that being formed in us and us being made holy is a process. And so we've got to be patient with one another. We got to be patient with ourselves. We got to be patient with the fact that people may be moving toward peace, and then they may slide back into their old nature, or you may slide back to your old nature, and you may do the same things that you had previously done. It doesn't mean that peace won't come. It just means that peace is in the process. And so we need patience. Again, fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness. It's part of the Spirit. It's not something that we can build up and contrive. It's not something we're going, oh, I'm going to be patient. It's through the fruit of the Spirit. So we're called to be patient. Again, Ephesians 4:2-6, we just read it. Always be humble and gentle. Be patient with each other, making allowance for each other's faults because of your love for them. Make every effort to keep yourselves united in spirit, binding yourselves together with peace. I mean, Paul is making it really clear that we are to be gentle and we are to be patient and we are to walk alongside one another through the journey of making peace, because we are called to make peace. And so be patient with one another and yourself. Be patient with yourself. The next one is be a person of integrity. In the midst of making peace, in the midst of coming to the place where we're trying to find that which is united, that which brings us together, that which restores and reconciles, then we need to be people of integrity. And so let your yes be yes and your no be no. Be someone that can be trusted. Be someone whose word can be trusted. If you're about the business of reconciling and making peace, then we should be able to be at a place where people can trust that what we say is what we mean. And so let your yes be yes and your no be no. Be a person who is true to their word. It's like this. If you're working on peace in your marriage and you say that you're going to do something, but every time from that point forward, you do the same thing that you had previously done, you're not a person of integrity. Now, it may be that that you do what you say you were going to do, but then you fall back or you slide back, or your flesh, you fall back into your flesh. You do the same thing, but that becomes the exception and not the norm. Then your yes is yes and your no be no is no, because you're human and we're going to fail. We're going to fall short. We're going to slide back. But if you say, yes, I'm going to do it, but nothing changes, then your yes means nothing. So let your yes be yes and your no be no. The last two are vitally important. In striving for peace and being peacemakers, we have to seek out compromise. And there are times that a person may be standing over here and you may be standing over here, and you're sitting going, we're so far apart. So what's the point of compromise? What's the place that we can meet? And this is kind of, and I want to clarify something I said on Sunday. I said there are going to be places and times where there will be no peace. And I talked about the fact that different religious structures, whether it be Christianity versus anyone else, that there may very well be no peace in that. And what I meant by is ultimate peace, final peace, because they are conflictual with one another. But can I live at peace? Can I seek peace? Can I seek to make peace with someone that I don't agree with, whether it be a Hindu or a Muslim or a Buddhist? Can I live peacefully with them? Yes. Yes. But what I'm talking about is an ultimate peace. So what's the compromise? If I'm called to make peace with someone else, you see, regardless of what someone's religious background is, they're created in the image of God. And so I'm called to make peace with them regardless. Just as we talked about on Sunday, Jesus says, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. And so we're called to live at peace with those people. So we should be making peace. And so if they're at conflict with us, then we step into that conflict and we try to find a place of compromise that we can reach, a place that we can agree, because we're going to have the disagreements regarding what we believe, but we can reach a place of compromise. So what's the place of compromise? And you hear about it all the time in families. Well, there are two things we don't talk about at family gatherings. We don't talk about religion. We don't talk about politics. Okay, that's a compromise. Because you know the divisions there, you know that there are going to be disagreements, and you know where the places and the points of disagreement are, which are politics and religion, so you choose not to talk about them. So we know what compromise looks like as we're trying to make peace. So with those people who are outside of the Christian faith, then we are called to make peace. We are called to love our enemies. We are called to pray for those who persecute us. We're called to love those who love us, love those who don't love us. So we're called to love everybody. So the way we make peace with those individuals is we find places of compromise. Now, what that does not mean is it does not mean you compromise your integrity does not mean you compromise your character and you change what you believe or you change what you know to be true for the sake of another. That's not what this compromise is. Compromise is a place that we can meet and we can be respectful of one another. And we could probably, I mean, I'm called to love my enemies. I'm called to love those I disagree with. So I will come into that situation loving you. So that's a place of compromise. And the last one is this: be ready to forgive. Be ready to forgive. We have been given so much mercy by God. God has given us and extended so much mercy to us, that which we don't deserve. And we are called to do the same to others. We've been given so much forgiveness, and we are called to do the same for others. And it requires humility. It requires patience. It requires everything that we've talked about up to this point. And we have been forgiven, and so therefore we are called to forgive, regardless of how difficult it is, how much we don't want to, how wrong we think it is to forgive the other. We are called to forgive the other. We don't have an option. As followers of Jesus and as people who say that we have the Holy Spirit of God living in us, we are called to forgive, and that's what we must do. So those are the steps, and I've gone way over because of all the technical difficulties. But those are some steps on how to be a peacemaker. I pray that you will be a peacemaker in your families, in your friendships, with people that you're at odds with, that you are divided with. I pray through the power of the Holy Spirit that you will be a peacemaker, and that God will use that not only in your life to give you more peace, but possibly to show other people the grace and the mercy and the love of God. That's what we get to carry. Remember, we are bearers of peace. We are carriers of peace. And we get to carry that in a multitude of other relationships. Sorry for the technical difficulties today. Thanks for bearing with me. Thanks for staying with me or coming back and listening to this. Let other people, send this to other people, comment, send other people to this on our Facebook page. It's also on our YouTube page. And a couple of things real quickly. We have a Good Friday service coming up during Holy Week. So just be prepared to come and as we celebrate the amazing gift of Jesus giving up his life for us so that we could live, then we're going to celebrate that on Good Friday, moving into Easter. And then, of course, we have Easter. I would really encourage you, think of 2 people to pray for who need Jesus, 2 people in your life who have either walked away from Jesus or never responded to Jesus. Invite them to Easter. Invite them to come and worship with you, with your family, and with us. I have no doubt in my mind God's going to show up. I have no doubt that we're going to see the very presence of God active within our midst on Good Friday and on Easter. And so invite those people. I love you. I thank God for you. Hope to see you soon. Have an amazing day and go out and be peacemakers. We'll see you soon.